Morning, guys. I'm just going to explain what we would like you to do for writing for this week. We've decided to move away from Pobble a little bit and actually set you a longer writing task to complete. Um, so, in light of what is kind of going on in the world at the moment, obviously we've all been affected by what's going on. I thought it would be good to link our writing to what is currently going on. And an idea that I had is for us all to be writing poems about what's going on in the world. Now, we've written a few poems so far since I've been teaching. We did a World War II poem for Remembrance Day, and some of us did a poem not so long ago about refugees. Um, so we have written quite a few, so you should know by now what the features are of a poem. Now, when I say a poem, I want you to be thinking maturely, high level, um, and obviously to think of an appropriate poem that you can write at this time. Um, so your task is to write a poem relating to what is currently going on in the world. This can be a positive or a negative poem, depending on the viewpoint that you choose. So we talk a lot about viewpoint when we're writing. In fact, every single time we write, we think about actually whose viewpoint are we writing from. And it all comes down to actually how do we want to make our reader feel and why. Um, Mr. Smith and I have decided actually we really want to post these on Twitter and tag in as many people as possible. Um, Obviously, we don't want really, really, really negative poems, but we want you to really be thinking about actually what are you writing and why are you writing it. A positive poem would be lovely, and obviously, your poem could reach a really wide audience, and we really hope to really publicize your poems that you do create. Now, why did I get this idea? Well, I listened to this beautiful, beautiful song, which some of you might have heard or seen on television in the last week, and it's called Lean on Me. It's a very old song, actually, really old song. But the lyrics to that song, I think, are really relevant to what's going on. And obviously, any song we listen to really is a poem. And all lyrics of all songs, really do have a meaning. And if you actually looked at the lyrics that are written down, you would understand the message more than possibly hearing it on on online. Um, Now the link is here for the song. So if you haven't heard it, I really recommend hearing it first before you start getting ideas for your poem. It's a very emotional video. This is what the video looks like here, so that you know which one to go on. It is an emotional song, and it did make me feel quite emotional when I listened to it. But that's obviously the effect that the song is supposed to have on people. So watch it first, watch it with your parents, just to give you an idea or a kind of, actually what is a poem, because I think in itself that is a poem in a song. So the first thing you'll need to do is think actually whose viewpoint am I going to write from? Because your poem will be driven by actually how do you want your reader to feel and who are you writing it from. So you could write it from your own point of view. I'm sure you have lots of feelings as to what's going on at the moment. You could write it from an elderly or a vulnerable person at this time. You could write it from a nurse or a key worker's viewpoint. And remember, a key worker covers lots and lots and lots of roles. Or you could write it from a charity or helper in the community. Now, I might not have listed all the viewpoints, and you might come up with a much better viewpoint than what I've listed, which is absolutely fine. Step 2, are you going to write in first, second, or third person? So we talk about this a lot in class. So first person would be I, second person you. So remember, second person is powerful because you're actually putting the reader in the shoes of of what's going on. Third person, they, he, she. Now, your tense, you can decide. Past tense would be obviously the obvious choice, but if you do want to write it in present tense, then that's fine. Now, this is a weekly task, and therefore I have put in some non-negotiables that I really want to see at the end of your poems. So your poem must have at least 4 verses or 20 lines in total. So, 5 lines a verse, or, you can have more than 4 verses if you want, but it has to be at least 4 verses. Lots of alliteration. Um, and remember, alliteration is where words have the same sound. So the bouncing book, both of the words start with the b sound. Lots of abstract nouns. If you've forgotten what an abstract noun is a noun, a thing that you can't see or touch, but you can feel it. So of course, the words hope, sorrow, and love, you can feel those words, but you can't see or touch them. Similes, at least 2 similes. If you've forgotten what a simile is, it's when you're comparing um, 2 things. So you might say, the boy ran like a cheetah. So you're comparing the boy to the cheetah. Personification is where you give an object a human feature. And we've spoken a lot about emotion for action phrases. So things like sorrow leapt through me. That's a personification phrase because it can literally happen. Hope washed over me. That's personification. And then a rhetorical question is where you make the reader think. So those things on that list there are what I want to see by the end of the week. Now, as a challenge, I want you to think about our gospel values. So you know that the 2 posters at the front of the school, which we've looked at a lot this year, and we've spoken a lot about gospel values. I think these words in red here really are relevant to what's currently going on. Compassion, forgiveness, courage, humility, kindness, justice, integrity, peace. I don't think there's one word there that you couldn't fit into your poem that really does link to what's going on. And in our school, we live by these values. So I want you to think, actually, how could you incorporate these into your poem? Particularly, if I was writing a poem, I'd be looking at the word kindness and compassion and courage. I could probably get every single word here into my poem. And can you use repetition for effect? So when you listen to the song Lean on Me, there is a lot of repetition, and there's a reason why there's a lot of repetition. And I want you to think, actually, if in your poem, what word or phrase could you repeat for effect? Um, then I want you to move on to planning your poem. So, this is a weekly task, and I'm not expecting you to do all of this in one day. I want you to be really thinking about this over the week. Now, planning is absolutely critical. If you do not plan fully, then your poem might not have the impact that you do actually want it to have. Now, I want you to use this format, and I want to see your planning sheets. And I'm happy to look at your planning before you actually start writing your poem, just to check that you've got enough vocab, you really know what your purpose is, you know who you're writing for, um, and feel free to show me that before you actually start writing. So this planning format you should be really familiar with now, because we've used this in every single piece of writing that we've done this year. Now, I've left the audience blank because the audience really will depend on what your idea is. You know, really think, actually, are you targeting this to adults, young adults, children, everyone? Who is your audience going to be? And you're going to fill that in. Now, the purpose of this poem really, really is to give or show an important message to others. That really is what I'm looking for the purpose of your writing to be. Our form, which means our type of writing, is of course a poem, and the context, which means our topic. This is a current worldwide topic. You can draw this on in your books, you can draw it on a piece of paper, but you really should be thinking about this before you start writing a poem. So how do you want the reader to feel? Well, that will depend on who your viewpoint is from, and what your audience is. What's your toolkit? So what are you going to include in your writing? And then finally, your examples on the outside. So I want to see your planning formats before you start writing. I've had a go at doing my own. Obviously, on a computer, I can't write everything on here. So here's just some of the things that I would write on my poem. So if I was doing a poem, I would be writing from my own viewpoint probably, and I would probably go for it in second person, you. My audience would be young adults. How do I want the reader to feel? Well, I'm currently experiencing what's going on, as are you guys and everyone else in the world. I want the reader to feel sad for what's happening. I want the reader to know that they should be, keep positive. I want them to think about their actions on, what they're doing daily. Um, and I want them to have faith, and I want them to feel that things are going to get better. What am I going to use to make the reader feel that way? Well, in my toolkit, I know I'm going to have to use lots of abstract nouns. I'm going to have to use emotion for action. I'm going to have to use personification. And what are my examples of that on the outer layer? Well, I know my abstract nouns I could use might be hope, sorrow, faith, and love. What emotion through action phrase am I going to use to make my reader feel or give an important message? Well, I could have something like, let hope and faith spread through your soul, because I want to make people feel positive. My purpose is to make the reader feel positive. And the last layer really is the most important. Generating vocabulary is really, really, really important. One of the words I keep hearing on the news, and I'm sure you've heard it a lot as well on television, is the word unprecedented. That's a top vocab word that the government are using, really formal word. But again, that's something you're going to have to think about. Do you want to have formal words, or do you want to have informal words? And that will depend on who your audience is. You're not going to use the word unprecedented if you're writing for younger children, for example. So really think about your vocabulary and look at synonyms. Google is great for looking at synonyms. So have a look and really make sure you've got vocabulary. Then you need to draft and edit your poem, as we would in school, really checking those spelling rules. You've got to pack in your folders with all the spelling rules on to look at. And then lastly, publish your work. I want you to really think about what you're writing. I want these to be really powerful poems. And, I really hope that when I read them, Mr. Smith reads them, or anyone reads them, that, we really feel sad, or we feel your emotion in your poem. Make it look as lovely as it can be. Rainbows are everywhere at the moment, and rainbows, like I've written, like it says here, they really do signify hope, and positivity. Now, I would expect you to get to Friday with your poems completed fully. And and by that point, you've planned, you've drafted, you've edited, you really have thought about your poems, and we want to see them on Friday. So you can send them in on Twitter, you can get your parents to send them on eSchools. But we really are wanting a powerful poem. And, like I said at the beginning, this is such a relevant topic and it's affecting all of us, that I'm hoping that your poems could give some positivity to people in the community, and really treat this as a year 6 level piece of work. You work incredibly hard in writing, and I know that some of you will produce some amazing work. So good luck. Let me know throughout the week, or Mr. Smith, if you have any questions. We can look at them, we can edit them, tell you what you need to improve. But I'm, really wishing you luck with this and really look forward to seeing your poems. Enjoy your week of writing and take care. Bye.